Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
And welcome to another quarantine episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. I am assistant to the GM.
I am a rebuild enthusiast.
And I'm Herney Ernie.
Ernie, bringing the party today. Oh, boy.
Yes. Listen to the life we have in our voices. Party. It is party time.
It's like time is melting together for everyone, but this morning when we planned what time specifically we'd be recording to now, it feels like a whole separate day. I haven't done much. Did some yard work.
It's just day.
Yeah.
Basically, I do work day 1 to 5, and then I do not work day 1 to 2, and then I just continue onwards. Doesn't matter the day, the month, the year. This is it.
The new "This is real" tweet that I saw that's a whole mood right now is I realized that if you boil my life down, I'm doing two things: eating and waiting to eat. And it's not even like I'm obsessed with food thing. It's just like I was like, well, that's the only thing I have to do right now. So
I go from breakfast to lunch to dinner.
I've done that transition a few times. I've done a late breakfast at like 10:30 a few times, 10:30 or 11, so I have something small, and then immediately follow it up with lunch at 12:30. So, gaming the system that way.
Yeah, I got nothing to look forward to right now. Just working. Actually, that's a lie. My hitting net is supposed to be here Tuesday, so I may never show up to a podcast again.
Could you text us your address? Brad and I are going to scout out your front porch and definitely not steal your packages.
I hope not. I really hope not. That's the only thing I have to look forward to right now with my life.
I feel like being a porch pirate wouldn't be too difficult, honestly. You just got to be quick.
Yeah, you got to be fast and
doesn't even matter if they see you.
Try not to get caught on camera. That's it.
Yeah, wear a mask.
Despite the deadness in our voices, we actually have a good amount of content on this episode of the podcast. A lot to talk about. Do you guys?
I don't know what's up with you guys. I actually did prep work for this episode. I'm ready to go, and that has nothing to do with the fact that I already spent a couple hours writing out an article for our website today.
I did prep work too, Brad. It doesn't mean I'm invigorated.
Yeah, I did too.
No, you didn't.
Oh, no. Look how believable his face is. Actually, speaking of the way we look, Evan, our video technician, so last episode went off without a hitch with the recording, but Evan neglected to tell us, Brad, that with the bars that we have on the top and the bottom of the screen, we both look like small children, like peeking over a countertop.
Yeah, you look like you're trying to get your first drink from the bar.
So is this a good height for my head right now?
Yes, that is
Okay.
good.
I don't particularly care, so if this works, it works. If it doesn't, I'm not moving because I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
if the YouTube, all they can see is just like my nose and awful porn stash, so be it. That's what they get.
Brad is our resident boomer, calls it the YouTube.
The YouTube. Well, it is a series of tubes, is it not? That's right. 15-year-old callback joke.
Do you guys know what today is in terms of hockey?
Not hockey.
The 1-year anniversary of Steve Yzerman returning as GM of the Detroit Red
Oh, yeah, it's the 19th.
It's the 19th.
And tomorrow, at one point, it's going to be 4/20/4/20. So,
do we even get to? This is not. Doesn't
no,
the whole world?
We don't get to. I mean, if you have a supply in your house, by all means. But
I want to recount a little bit what happened on that day because some listeners might not know. They might have started listening later or missed that episode. But on 4/18, so April 18th of 2019, Brad, you and I both had
the most stressful 11 p.m. of our lives.
Yeah. We both had the news in our hands of what was going to happen the next day, and no one else had broken it yet. And
literally nobody. There wasn't even a rumor from a crappy offshoot rumor site. There was nothing. TSN, Sportsnet, Fox Sports Detroit, any of the outlets, Nothing.
And Brad and I both had the info, and we were just working hard to get like the second confirmation that we needed to put it out there. And ultimately, we could not find what we felt was necessary to corroborate, because that would have been big news. And it was in the end, but that would have been like a lot of attention and focus. And we're like, we can't stake our entire reputation on this without knowing 100%. It was like 98, but in all fairness and in all, I don't know, credibility. We were just looking to be 100% certain, and we said, well, if we can't be 100% certain, we can't go with it. And we talked to anyone who we knew who might be in the know, and they were all like, I have heard nothing about that. And we were like, all right, let's sit on it. And I went to bed, and I was like, I know it. I know I'm going to wake up to this news. Lo and behold, I get up at 6 a.m. What's out there? Steve Yzerman is coming home.
I know. It went out at like 5 in the morning. Even if it went out at like 8 in the morning, we could have just come over the top with our bullshit. Yeah. We can confirm from our sources. We can absolutely confirm this. It was 5 in the morning. Nobody had a chance. We were just done. We just missed it.
Was it Craig Button that got it out there first, I think?
I think it was Gordon Miller, if I'm not mistaken.
Miller? Yeah. And that's the thing. Like with that kind of news, it was only fresh for so long. By the time we reached 2 a.m., 10 different people probably had it. Anyways, that's not the point of it. April 19th was a ride. I was driving 3 hours, and I actually stopped half the way. I left for my destination about 4 hours later than I should have because of the news and just keeping up with Twitter and everything. And then I left, and then halfway on my way home, I pulled over and went to a random Starbucks to sit and listen to the press conference and watch my laptop and tweet with that as well. And then I think listeners had to wait until that Sunday. So I think that was a Saturday, and they had to wait another day for the episode. But that was just like a nutso crazy day.
It was fun. It
was fun.
It was legitimate happy times.
That was probably the happiest that I've been as a Red Wings fan since we've started the podcast.
2018 draft comes close. We were pretty over the moon that day.
Yeah, I was pretty drunk when we drafted Zadina. I was at a wedding, so
that only ups the happiness factor.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know how much of it was the was the open bar and how much of it was Zadina, but I'd like to think they complemented each other.
Well, those two didn't hurt.
No, Veleno definitely didn't hurt. Those two definitely are the best 2 days since we started this podcast, and they both have come within the last 2 years.
We're waiting to add the third head to that monster.
Waiting, yeah.
Lafreniere would be the king of the moments.
That's the middle head. That's the big one.
We need it.
If we have to watch a draft lottery remotely, I'll be so sad.
Hey, Ryan, guess what?
What?
We're going to have to watch a draft lottery remotely.
I hope your shipment gets held up at the Canada Post, and you can see in the tracking that it's like 500 meters away from you, and they don't deliver it for 4 extra days.
If I know anything about Canada Post, that's highly likely.
Yeah, actually, it's happened to me a couple times. No, you're right, Evan. It probably is going to happen that way. And I was just like so excited for us to be in the room watching on the TV, waiting to either be like incredibly disappointed or actually jump through the window out of excitement, or actually maybe jump out of the window out of disappointment. We would have been out the window no matter what.
Somebody's jumping.
Somebody's jumping.
I have discovered one positive, though, to doing a draft lottery remotely and during a quarantine. Because I don't have anywhere to drive, I can day drink before the draft lottery so that by the time the actual drawing rolls around, I won't feel anything. There will be no anxiety, no depression, no happiness, no joy. I'll be passed out.
Well, yeah, we've been trying to get you to do a drunk episode for a while, but you keep saying, I have kids and it's 3 a.m. Stop calling me. So it's been a little bit difficult. So maybe now this is a silver lining out of the quarantine. We can finally get drunk Brad.
And we could maybe even do like a drunk Patreon episode. I don't know. We're going to need to. Although my supplies are running very low at the moment because I've been doing a lot of barbecuing during the quarantine. And anytime I bust out the barbecue, I can't barbecue and not have a beer. So I'm almost out of beer.
We have a kegerator in our basement. The CO2 tank has run out, and it's you can't get that filled right now. That's not an essential service, which is man.
I had a similar problem, but not with alcohol. I always keep 2 propane tanks for the barbecue, so that like if one runs out, just throw the backup one in and then get the next one filled the next day. Obviously can't get them filled right now either. And I had my barbecue on for 3 minutes this year before the first one ran out.
You're not going to go to Costco to get it filled?
I might, but I don't know if it's worth the risk at this point.
Funny story. I've been a little bit uneasy about going like to Costco because we've been doing like click and collect groceries where we just like order ahead of time and they bring it to the car.
Yeah, you only got to order 10 days ahead.
Yeah, which is jarring. We actually used that before the quarantine because we both are lazy.
Same. I have children.
Yeah. And so we've been doing that, but I was like, there's some things we need from Costco. It's impossible to find at the grocery store right now, whether you order ahead or not. And I was like, I don't love the idea of going. We're in our basement working on some stuff. And what do I see in our list or in our pile of materials for the renovations? 2 N95 masks. And I was like, amazing. Thank you. Popped one of those on my face. I went to Costco this morning. Probably still contracted something. But I got toilet paper. I got paper towels. I got flour. They only sold it in the 20 kilogram bags. So we're going to be doing a lot of baking. Drop you guys off some stuff.
If you want to just send some of the baking over to me, I'll leave it on the porch. I'll take care of it. It'll be fun.
A reason to leave the house? Yeah, I'll do that. Anyhow, back to Yzerman.
Welcome to the quarantine, the most mundane opening in the history of the Wing Wheel podcast.
All right. Very quickly, I want to go over Yzerman's first year. And I know this is something that some people have been doing. I don't know if our opinions are going to vary too much from what you've seen, but I think it's important to look back and talk about what Yzerman has done as a GM, especially in his first year. Now, this is something I want to preface with kind of a byline that we've been saying from the start, which is that Yzerman hasn't been able to do a lot. And that's to be expected because this team is kind of locked up in what it's able to do for a few different reasons. One being that it's not a competitive team, so there's no point. That rules out half the possible moves, which are try to improve the team with like players that are good now. The moves that would make it better means moving bad contracts, which the team has a few notable ones. It's starting to shed itself of them, but it has a few notable ones still, and those ones are near impossible to move. So with that and a no superstar, like game-breaking talent and a pipeline that was doing a little bit better, but still relatively dry, Yzerman walked into a much worse situation than what he did when he went over to Tampa Bay some like 7 years ago. I always forget the number, 7 or 8 years ago. It's not the same situation where he had that kind of core. He had Stamkos and everything. It's a much tougher ask. And you might say, well, you're kind of just setting himself up to look good no matter what. And the reality is like, yeah, it's going to be hard to mess up your first year when you can't do much. So with that said, I don't know. I think you guys both agree unless we have some dissenting opinions, which I'd be surprised by.
I mean, he's been fine. Like if you break it down bit by bit, free agency was good because he didn't overspend on any money. He got some roster fillers for cheap contracts and basically no term in Filppula and Nemeth and Pickard. Cool. That's a win.
We're gonna go through this step by step. We're gonna go through
yeah. Overall, it's been fine. I wouldn't say it's been spectacular. I wouldn't say it's been bad. He hasn't done much. He's done a lot, but a lot of essentially nothing transactions.
He's been working in the margins.
Yeah, exactly. And my overall grade would be like a somewhere between a B- and a B+. We'll just give him a B. Again, because he hasn't had that home run yet in terms of getting a Lafreniere or, God forbid, a big trade that lands you a superstar. Not likely to happen, but because the reality of it is until Yzerman lands a superstar, this team is going to struggle. So I don't know if you can even give him an A until that happens, whether that's this year's draft lottery, next year's. One of our guys just inexplicably explodes, like Zadina puts up 35 or 40 this year, great. Not betting on it. But yeah, it's been, I think fine is the appropriate word here.
That's basically all you can really expect from him, given the cards he has, and nobody wants to trade for your cards. It's all you can do. So, like Ryan said, working in the margins and trying to set the table for future success.
Yeah, I think a B is a fair assessment. And I think it's also fair to say it would be harder to get higher than that without something like anomalous happening. Like Chiarelli was still GM of the Oilers and you found a way to snake Taylor Hall from him if Taylor Hall was still on the Oilers or something stupid like that. Essentially, yeah, like Evan said, coming into the situation that Steve Yzerman did, B is essentially your ceiling. It's not much you can do. So we'll go through piece by piece and just talk about the deals. First one, we'll talk about the signings. So Valtteri Filppula to fill in as the 2-3 center for Detroit, 2-year, $3 million a year cap hit. Yeah, fine.
Guy fills roster spot. Great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whenever there's focus on Filppula, I kind of laugh. And it's like, yeah, you're right about everything you're saying, but who else did you want them to take? Like his cap hit doesn't matter because they have a world of cap space. It's a 2-year deal, so it's done in the blink of an eye. And there's no one else to play that position. Rasmussen needed the year, and we don't know if he's going to be a center when he comes up. And there's still like behind Larkin, who can confidently play center. So that deal was okay. Like, yeah, whatever. He wasn't phenomenal for Detroit, but I would hardly say he was the worst player. And then you have Patrick Nemeth at a 2-year, same deal exactly. And I like the Patrick Nemeth signing. I think he was good for what he was asked to do last year, which was provide some stability on defense, which is a difficult thing to do if you're playing for the Detroit Red Wings. Not a lot of strong defensive players, especially within their defensive core. And with DeKeyser first rebounding and then going out, Nemeth very quickly became the most effective defensive defenseman on Detroit. Didn't provide virtually anything in terms of offense, but that's not what he was asked to do. So I would say like that's another fine signing, if not a good one. Like I'm happy with Nemeth on this team right now.
Yeah. He plays D, he doesn't score, you don't notice massive mistakes. Okay.
You might actually even want to re-sign him after next year. So that's a plus.
He does what he does very well.
If we're looking at a version of the Red Wings with a strong defensive core in 2 or 3 years, I would be happy with Nemeth as a third pairing guy to have that kind of stability there.
Yeah, absolutely. We stole the term from Steve and used it a lot. Competent bum.
Yep.
He's a guy that fills spot and doesn't screw it up.
And then the 2-year deal for Calvin Pickard has been bleh. He was supposed to be more or less coverage for Howard and Bernier if and when one of them went down. And when that happened, he didn't really do much in terms of NHL performance. So he's fine in the AHL for now. Not really. He's not a needle mover. Not a great signing, but it affects the world zero.
It was a necessary signing because going into the season, Grand Rapids didn't have a goalie. The one Grand Rapids goalie we knew of before Pickard was Philip Larson, an often injured prospect who had never played a day of professional hockey. So, yeah, they needed anyone, and Pickard came in, I think, just above league minimum for cap hit. 2 years, it's fine.
Yeah. Moving on to the trades, which was something that was pretty exciting, mostly because they happened after 11:30 at night. The first one was acquiring former player when he was GM of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Sorry. When he was GM of the Tampa Bay Lightning, this was one of his former players, Adam Ernie, in exchange for a 4th-round pick. Yeah, like Adam Ernie's a very, very competent defender, one of the best defensive forwards for the Red Wings last year. We speculated because Adam Ernie talked about, he didn't really have a big role in Tampa Bay, and he felt like he had another gear in terms of offense. And we speculated and thought that could be a thing, and that could be like a really good boon for Detroit. That was not the case. The defense, great, 100%. The offense, not there.
Hindsight 2020 if we had a do-over on that trade, would we make that trade again? No, probably not. I mean, you keep the 4th round pick. You want the extra lottery ball just in case you hit on it. But at the time, it was fine. You get an NHL player for a 4th round pick. Fine.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, if Yzerman wasn't his former GM, it'd be a little bit more of a head scratcher. Clearly, Yzerman thought that there was something in his game that could translate to some offense, but it hasn't happened. So how many times you get a NHL player out of your 4th round pick? Not very often. So it's whatever.
And for a lot of these moves, like, you're going to get the same kind of comments. And I think that really points towards Yzerman, like, really leaning into the tank this year. He wasn't looking for hidden gems every time. He was looking for warm bodies who could fill in the lineup. He wanted the team to be able to play this year, but he did not want them to win, very obviously. So in running with the tank, you need to put out a team that can reasonably go out there and play hockey, but is not going to come close to coming anywhere besides 31st. And he was successful in that. And I think Ernie fit into that equation. You don't look at the Ernie trade and say, oh, he's paying for bad players, obviously. No, you say he paid a 4th round pick for, like Evan said, a guy who is an NHL player. He's not going to blow your mind, but he'll play hockey for you. He'll do a couple things well, and he'll slot into your lineup for the year because you just need players playing. You're not going to sign anyone to a long-term deal. You don't have the pipeline developed enough to fill that in from within the organization, so just bring in a guy. The next trade was acquiring defenseman Alex Biega from the Canucks for prospect David Pope, who is a former 4th round pick.
Well, David Pope looks, in all likelihood, like he's going to be a bust after finishing out his college career, playing all 4 years, dominating his last couple of years at Omaha, and then going into the Grand Rapids and being barely able to hang on to a AHL spot at age 24. Yeah, there was not anything coming from David Pope, and Alex Biega is competent bum. They already gave him an extension. He's a fine 6'7" guy, provides some energy, not a train wreck defensively, again, provides basically nothing offensively, which is a theme with this team that drives me nuts. Through no fault of these players, do I want to knock these guys for having no offense? I get it. There's just some players like that, and you need them in your lineup because they come cheap. But anyways, yeah, Biega, fine. If we redo that trade, I probably still make that trade.
No, yeah, for sure. At the end of the year, too, Biega played so well that he earned himself an extension.
Exactly.
Relatively speaking, yeah.
Yeah, relatively speaking. Just have that, like, grayed out text before every word we say. Relatively speaking. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast.
By Detroit Red Wings standards.
And then the following trade is probably the biggest knock against Yzerman since stepping in as Red Wings GM, which was acquiring Brendan Perlini from the Chicago Blackhawks in exchange for former 3rd round pick from 2018, Alec Regula.
I mean, when the trade was made, it made sense. Perlini has scored 20 goals in a season in the NHL before. So you would have hoped to have got what, he had 1 or 2 goals this year?
Yeah.
Even on a team as catastrophically bad as this team, you would hope Perlini would get more than 2. Redo the trade? Absolutely not. But I will still argue till I'm blue in the face that Perlini was never given a proper shot in Detroit. I've read articles from beat writers and other media members saying, yeah, Perlini was given a chance in the top 6 and on the power play, and it just didn't click. What? Did I miss those games? I think he played 3 shifts on the second line and had like a week on the second power play unit. I don't know what you're talking about when you say he was given a fair shake. That dude spent 95% of his time on the 3rd line or lower or healthy scratched and saw minimal power play time. So I think there's more there than what he's shown, because when he first got to Detroit, he actually had a ton of chances. It was a running joke how snakebit he was. Like when Martin Jones robs you on an empty net, the way Martin Jones has played this year, yeah, you know you're cursed. Still, I didn't love giving up Regula for him at the time, and it looks even worse now. And then Regula went on to have a really good year in the OHL. I still don't think he's going to be anything more than a bottom pairing defenseman in the NHL, but still, Perlini might not be an NHLer at this point. So do you want the 20-year-old potential bottom pair guy with some offensive upside or a guy who might be out of the league in 2 years? I probably want the prospect back at this point, but I get it when he made the trade, but yeah, whatever. It didn't work.
Yeah, I think I don't know what our collective thought was, but I think I defended the trade saying Regula probably will be nothing more than a 6'7" guy, and Perlini was once a high-end prospect with clearly the ability to score and has some speed, but he's been just stuck with incompetent line mates, so he never really got the shake that he needed. I still probably wouldn't do the trade now that I have hindsight in my favor, but yeah, it's just a kind of a bad situation all around.
Yeah, there are times where Perlini, looks snake bitten, and there were times where you're like, you just fired that right to the logo. Like, what? Where's the 20 goal scorer in here? So you have to wonder, was that 20 goals a product of who he was playing with? Is that just kind of hidden somewhere and could it come out in a future season? And I think you can make the assessment that it probably wasn't the most phenomenal trade without writing off Perlini completely as an NHLer. Like, he could have some rebound, but yeah, if you're the Red Wings, you're not hoping for a rebound sometime down the road. You're hoping kind of for a hidden gem like we're about to talk about with our next deal. But yeah, it would have been better to have Regula. Was it a net positive? No, absolutely not. Like I said, I think that's the biggest knock against Yzerman. But if that's the biggest knock against your GM in a year, then that's a pretty okay year from your GM in my mind. It's not a world mover. And if Regula ends up being a world mover, everyone would be shocked. But you can fairly say, yeah, it would have been better to keep him, and that's completely fine. What would offset that now is the trade of the year, which was offloading quintessential warm body, just a guy who you often, if you don't follow the team, you wouldn't even know he played. And sometimes people who follow the team also didn't know who this guy was. Steve Yzerman traded Jacob De La Rose to the St. Louis Blues in exchange for none other than Robbie Fabry, 1-for-1.
The new it was 1-for-1 meme. Though the beauty of this trade is you could take all the other assets Yzerman traded for all the other trades we just talked about, not actually get those players back, and just trade all those assets straight up for Robbie Fabry. And if the year played out like it did, we're happy with that trade, because Robbie Fabry looks like he could be a consistent second liner who puts up 40 to 50 points a year, and he got him for a guy who at the time of the trade, in my opinion, probably shouldn't have even been in the lineup. At best, he was a fourth line winger who was going to score one goal for the St. Louis Blues. Robbie Fabry scored more goals in his first two periods as a Red Wing than Jacob De La Rose has scored as a Blue, period.
And now that deal happened was because St. Louis obviously is the defending Stanley Cup champion. That's going to be a pretty talented roster and a hard one to crack. Fabry had a rough start to his career, a lot of promise, but two different ACL surgeries, and which very quickly derailed his development. Affected his game for sure. His foot speed was never the same, but still, despite the injury risk, really effective, really talented player. And the Red Wings are still carrying that risk, of course. Fabry's up for up as an RFA this year. That said, if he's able to stay healthy, which he was for the most part with the Red Wings this year, incredibly effective. Just like one of the most exciting parts about watching the Red Wings this year.
Yeah, and the thing is too, I will argue there is no risk. If his knee explodes next year and he never plays another game, oh well, we got Jacob De La Rose off waivers. From an asset management standpoint, Robbie Fabry cost us nothing. Literally, because Jacob De La Rose got claimed off waivers from Montreal. And then you turn Jacob De La Rose into Robbie Fabry. That's a hell of a boon.
Next couple trades are pretty inconsequential. YZER-VERSARY, who had essentially come and gone as a Red Wings defensive prospect in exchange for goaltender Eric Comrie from Arizona. Eric Comrie, who was then lost on waivers after a few games just because of roster needs, and he was picked up by Winnipeg. So that was one that was very quickly gone, although not a lot lost unless you're a Grand Rapids Griffins fan.
Yeah, at this point, not even worth analyzing.
And then Oliver Kasky, who was brought over from Europe but wanted more minutes, and was then shipped to Carolina for defenseman Kyle Wood, who is not going to be an NHLer. This is another minor league deal.
Cool.
And then the trade deadline. Conditional fourth for Mike Green.
Great. He played 6 games with Edmonton, I believe.
And then 2 second-round picks in Sam Gagner for Andreas Athanasiou and Ryan Kuffner.
Still think we could have done better, but if that was the market, that was the market. It's fine.
Yeah, that one's still so fresh. I actually recommend you go back and listen to our post-trade deadline episodes. We had 2 episodes where we talked about that deal in detail. So you can go listen to those for some more detail about that. But yeah, that was like everything's coming in the fine range. Like needle moves a little bit left into the territory with the trade for we were just talking about like the
Fabry?
only bad. Oh yeah, no, not Fabry. The trade where he traded Regula for Perlini.
Oh yeah.
And then it moves pretty firmly to the right of that meter where you say, yeah, this is a fantastic deal in the 1-for-1 trade for Fabry. Waivers were again, most of these are just like either warm body or AHL stuff. Cody Golubeff, who is literally like the most. We just need a guy to play so we can keep our good players in Grand Rapids player ever picked up. He played a couple games and then was scratched, and then a great pickup in Dmytro Timashov from Toronto around the deadline.
I was going to say, don't you dare call Dmytro Timashov a warm body. This guy's actually got potential. Whether or not he realizes it and lives up to it's a whole nother thing, but this guy absolutely has the toolkit to be a decent third-line winger in the NHL, and in his brief stint with the Red Wings before we got coroned out of hockey, he looked good. No points to show for it, but if he was playing on anything other than the fourth line with some competent line mates, I would have been pretty confident in saying he would have put some points up at least. Great puck handler, very aggressive, strong on the puck. Skating needs some work, but don't we all? And yeah, I'm optimistic for him. Like for the next thing we're doing, where we're talking about our 2020, 2021 rosters, he's on the roster for me, and a couple guys we've already talked about are not, and he was a waiver pickup. So I thought that was a very, I'm not going to say sly, but an underappreciated move this season.
He did steal Sebastian Aho's soul with that deke at the blue line against Carolina in one of the last games before.
I think it was the very last game.
Yeah. And additionally, what's his deal like? What's his contract?
I think he's an RFA now. But he's no longer waiver eligible, hence why we got him. So he's either gone or on the Red Wings next year. Because apparently a few teams put a claim in on him, but because Detroit was dead last, we had first rights, which is why he's a Red Wing. So I think it's safe to assume, short of a catastrophic training camp and preseason, he'll be on the team next fall, winter, maybe, hopefully.
And now that's all in terms of what Yzerman has done. His next big test is what happens with the coaching. Like, obviously the draft, but we don't know when that's going to happen. So really the next big test is what happens with the coaching situation.
Yes, my grade could swing very heavily based on that.
There's a funny little clause here in Blashill's contract that makes this interesting, which is that there's a certain amount of days, I think like 2 weeks after the end of the season, where Detroit has the option to pick up the last year of Blashill's contract. If not, they pay him out like $400,000, I think it is, or something like that, and he walks. And the Red Wings are on the hunt for a new head coach, with guys like Lane Lambert and Gerard Gallant available. So when is the end of the season? We don't know. That would technically have qualified as like the last day after the Stanley Cup was awarded, but that's up in the air now. So the Red Wings don't really know when this could happen. The lottery and the draft could technically happen before that window is up. No one really understands what's going on right now, and so much of it is still uncertain. So Yzerman's next biggest tests are uncircled on his calendar because he doesn't know where they are, but they will very heavily influence the impression in his first year or second year performance, I should say. This next draft class will be with his draft team. It'll be with Chris Draper, not Tyler Wright, leading amateur scouting. It'll be with a lot of the scouts that he brought on, a lot of guys that he let go or went with Holland. So this is the year where every single move that Yzerman makes is his and solely his. Obviously, there's still things like Abdelkader's contract and Nielsen's contract and things like that he can't shake quite yet. But the fog of Holland or the Holland era is lifting a lot, and it's not so thick anymore. Speaking of next year, let's very quickly talk about what next year could bring. So we will project, what do we want to say, 13 forwards, 7 defensemen, 2 goalies for the Red Wings for 2021?
Well, you're allowed to carry 3 healthy scratches, right? So to be 14 and 7 or 13 and 8, depending on what tickles your fancy, or 12, 6 and 3 if you want to get real weird.
Ugh.
Or 13, 6 and 3 if you want to get real weird.
Let's go. We'll each do our own renditions of it, or do we want to do a big one together?
Nah, we'll do our own renditions because it'd be fun to see if they differ.
All right. Brad, do you want to go first? You seem raring to go here.
Yeah, like I said, I actually did some prep work, so I've got a lineup in front of me. So now I tried to do this as I would do it, but also keep it very much in the realm of realistic, knowing how the organization operates. So as much as I would love to have Veleno and Hirose and Rasmussen and Svechnikov and every single prospect in the lineup, I know it's not going to happen. So I tried to keep the guys coming up from Grand Rapids to a reasonable minimum. I think I had, 1, 2, 3 guys coming up from Grand Rapids. So I'm not, 4 if you count Cholowski. But yeah, so if I'm building the lineup, I keep the MLB line together, line 1. Chemistry is something that's very, very, very hard to build, and the Red Wings actually have probably a top 10 worthy first line in the NHL who single-handedly dragged them to some wins this year. Yeah, don't overthink it. Second line, again, I think this one's going to be pretty obvious given the state of the roster. I got Fabry, Filppula, and Zadina. As much as we'd love to throw a guy from Grand Rapids into that second line center spot, I don't think there's anybody ready. I think the only way that realistically changes is if Veleno sets the world on fire, like absolute fire during the preseason, or if the Red Wings pick second overall and land Quinton Byfield. And even then, I'm not certain he doesn't go back to Sudbury. So I don't see the top 6 being jumbled from that, just because the Red Wings don't have enough top 6 caliber players in their lineup. I would argue there's only 5 in that top 6, but welcome to a rebuild. Third line, Darren Helm. I don't like putting Michael Rasmussen at center, but the organization very much wants Rasmussen to be a center. So you put him at center with Darren Helm as the safety valve at left. And then, I don't know if this will be a controversial opinion, I actually want to re-sign Sam Gagner to put him on a line like this, to provide a young guy like Michael Rasmussen with some offensive help, because God knows Darren Helm won't. So you get your safety valve defensive forward in Helm, and then you can have Rasmussen learning center at the NHL level, and then you have Sam Gagner to actually help him produce. My fourth line would be Timashov, as we mentioned, Glendening at center, and then Svechnikov on the other wing, because I don't know if it's been talked about yet, but Evgeny Svechnikov is no longer able to go down to Grand Rapids without going through waivers, and a former first-round pick, if he goes through waivers, he's getting claimed. So they either lose him or keep him in Detroit, and you're not going to keep I don't know how old he is, 22, 23-year-old in Detroit, if you're not going to play him. So might as well put him on the fourth line there. My healthy scratches would be Franz Nielsen, Christopher N. If this team stays fully healthy and neither of those two play a single game this whole year, I'm fine with it. Defense, we've talked about it, again, at length over the last few weeks trying to fill content. I think the top 4 is probably pretty well set. DeKaiser, Hronek, Nemeth, Seider. If you want to put Nemeth with Hronek instead, fine, but I don't think it makes a huge difference either way. Bottom pair will go Cholowski and Biega, because sure, and then Bowie being your 7th guy to go, in and out of the lineup as needed. I think if I had to guess, Hirose will be first recall on forward if needed, Lindstrom on defense, and then the goalies will be Jonathan Bernier and whatever cheap-ass veteran they pick up in free agency. I don't think Yzerman's going to do anything in free agency other than re-sign his RFAs, maybe bring Gagne back. As you can tell by my roster, I wouldn't even bother signing Ernie or Perlini because out of all the guys I have in my lineup, I don't want to pull any of them out to put those guys in unless you're going to pull N or Nielsen out. But A, you're not moving Nielsen's contract, and the Red Wings probably don't want to bury Abdelkader and Nielsen's contract in Grand Rapids. I think ownership can only stomach $4 million in the minors instead of $9 million. Yeah, and again, Adam Ernie scored in one game this season, and I think the same goes for Perlini. So they were great experiments. If they want to have success in their career, they probably need to go elsewhere anyway. So fly, little butterflies, fly.
Yeah, there's some givens here, like you said, that are pretty easy. Bertuzzi, Larkin, Mantha, first line, that's not going to split up, or if it does, it'll be a boomerang, and it's just going to come back together later after enough kicking and screaming or not scoring goals. Fabry and Zadina are going to comfortably slot into the top 6. I do see some people saying Fabry's not a top 6 player, blah, blah, blah. He shouldn't be in the top 6. And to that I say, yeah, but on this team...
This team, he spent a good chunk of last season on the first line.
Yeah, rightfully so. So I understand and I respect the people who say, yeah, but theoretically this shouldn't be the case. And you're right. And you should continue to scream from the rooftops until we're in a position where you actually have a real argument to make. And until then, all I can do is laugh.
You know the only way Robbie Fabry doesn't settle in on second line left wing this season is if Alexis Lafreniere slots in there instead.
Yep. And then centering those two, I have Filppula. I guess they might make it Nielsen sometimes, although that's, I think, less and less likely.
No.
Nielsen's moving further down the lineup. Nielsen truly is like such a nice accent to Filppula if you're Valtteri Filppula, because you haven't been particularly good if you're Filppula, but Nielsen is just, he's viewed under the same lens, and with his contract being worse and his play being worse, you're like, oh God, yeah, like Filppula is not that bad. Next line is tough to project. Like, I don't know, Timashov, Rasmussen, Svechnikov. Like, those are 3 uncertain players.
That will depend. That line, if we do pick up the coaching option on Blashill, will never exist.
No.
Could you ever see a reality where he puts 3 essentially rookies on the same line? No chance. Maybe a 4th line and they play 6 minutes.
And honestly, like, justified. Really justified.
Yeah, no, even I wouldn't do that. Yeah. Like, that's why I tried to offset Rasmussen with a couple of veterans who can hold and tread water, and then put 2 young guys on the bottom line with Glendening who can help them tread water.
What I might do in that case, and this is another player I have, the next line, the line. I use these terms loosely, and you might have noticed that. Like, I hate talking like specific lines, because what are they going to hold with this organization? Like 3 periods at
one
most?
Injury in preseason, and they're all gone.
Yeah, man, like a period where sometimes the Red Wings don't score for like 15 minutes and they switch lines, and sometimes they do score and then they switch lines. Like, lines don't exist on this team, and they haven't for some time. So,
well, it depends on who the coach is next year, which is the big wild card of all this, because if it's Blashill, we know we're not going to see any one line for more than 2, maybe 3 games, honestly. As much as that sounds like sarcasm, that's literally how it was this season, other than the MLB line coming back, then getting split up, then coming back, then getting split up. But if it's a new coach like Gerard Gallant, again, watching the Vegas Golden Knights as infrequently as we did, I noticed a lot of consistency in their lines, so maybe it changes if they bring a guy like that in. Lane Lambert, if he's the coach, I have no idea what he would do, so it's literally as speculative as we could get.
And then the next 3 players I've listed are Glendening. I agree with you, Brad. I would like to bring Sam Gagner back. That's assuming the organization does and he does. And then Darren Helm. Guys I have additionally Nielsen, and then A player who is thought to be brought over from Russia. Nothing has been confirmed, and you might be wondering why we haven't talked about this yet, because he just adds onto the pile of players that the Red Wings have supposedly signed, but nothing has been sealed and written yet. So his name's Alexander Kadaykin. He's a 7th round pick from 2014.
Yeah, about a half a point per game player in the KHL. So not
6'5", 218. He's a big boy.
Yeah, I'm not super concerned
I'm gonna
one way or the other.
I'm gonna slot him in as the extra player there, and if it's not him, it's Giovanni Smith. The issue with looking ahead is I don't know what waiver eligibility is quite yet, and I haven't gone into the details of looking up who will be waiver eligible next year or not, but that would affect these things. So if you're saying you're leaving off a guy who's not at waiver eligible, and you have someone who can flip up and down, yeah, you're probably right. And as we get closer to the season, we'll probably break it down into that granular of an analysis.
Giovanni Smith is waiver exempt
for next year too.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
so he can go down. Because again, I put Nielsen as and N as my two extras because I know they're going to be. If I had full autonomy of the team, they absolutely would not be. But I mean, we know you're not sending. Helene St. James already said it's a strong likelihood that Abdelkader's going to Grand Rapids, as he should, which is fine. I'm not going to pile on the guy. If Abdelkader wasn't going, Nielsen probably would. But you can't have that much dead cap in the AHL. You just can't. That's ownership wouldn't allow it. And at least Nielsen, he was horrible last year, but I don't think he's that bad. So if he gets into a few games and shows that, hey, last year was an aberration. I'm not worth $5.25 million, but I can hold my own on like a fourth line or a third line with Glendening or Helm or whoever. Sure, great, awesome. We get some more length out of him, but yeah, I'm not. If it was up to me, I wouldn't bother.
And then very quickly for defense, this is another one that's a little tricky. I have Kaiser, Hronek, Nemeth, Seider. I think same as most people. I have Lindstrom in the lineup, knowing that he very well might flip down because of waiver eligibility, and then Cholowski with Biega as the extra. If Bowie's brought back, which I personally wouldn't love, but again, he has enough offensive output where you almost can't ignore it. He's just so bad at playing actual defense, but I digress. Then you might push someone like Lindstrom out. I think this year is, if you're pushing Cholowski down again, it's not ever over until it's over, and defensemen take so long, but you would hope that this is the year that he cracks the roster and stays. So that's kind of where I'm at. And for goaltenders, I have Jonathan Bernier and Grice from the Islanders, just for the hot take.
Cool. Let's go with it. Backup free agent.
I don't know, Evan, if you have anything terribly different.
Well, basically the first two lines don't change. Burt, Larkin, Mantha, and Fabry, Zadina, and Filppula. Third line doesn't matter. I have Timashov, Glendening, and Svechnikov. I don't even know if those pairings.
That was my fourth line.
Well, our fourth line, let me tell you, it's high offense, very dynamic three players. It's Darren Helm, Nielsen, and poor guy Rasmussen. Just to get him into the lineup, so we'll probably be rattled about that.
Set him up for success there.
And then I have us bringing back Perlini because I don't think we give up on him yet. With his best buddy Christopher N eating hot dogs with him. And then I have Hirose as the guy who we're bringing up. I think he's waiver exempt, but I don't know. On defense, the top four are the exact same: Hronek, DeKaiser, Nemeth, Seider. Then I've got Biega and Cholowski as well. But I have a feeling that Bowie will be there instead of Cholowski, with Cholowski being the seventh guy. I just have a feeling that that's how they're going to roll it.
Depends on the coach. Because to me, this is Cholowski's season. He can't go down to Grand Rapids. He got sent down midway the last two seasons. He can't go down to Grand Rapids without shattering his confidence at this point, I would think, because he's shown well at the NHL level for extended periods of time already. So why wouldn't it happen now? He's bigger, stronger, older, been there, done that, had his development in Grand Rapids. He has to be up. He has to be.
Yeah. So make or break for him. And then I've got Bernier and Howard for goalies. Nothing too crazy. I see us calling up Giovanni Smith when we can. But yeah, we're not lighting the world on fire, that's for sure.
If they bring back on in, this team stays healthy, my hottest of hot takes is they might not finish dead last. They could work their way up to 30th or 29th, I think.
29th. Whoa.
Who are we
slow
better
down.
than?
There's a couple teams. If San Jose doesn't do something, they're free falling. Still don't love Ottawa.
They're adding Lafreniere and Byfield this year, though. So
Yeah, that's true. If John Gibson gets hurt early in the season, Anaheim could go off a cliff. But yeah, I would still bet on 31st because my prediction predicates this team staying very healthy. That's not going to happen. We are usually one of the most injured teams in the league. And also we're terrible. So yeah, the optimistic view would be like 29th. Like the MLB line stays together for a full season and stays healthy. They'll steal us a fair share of games. Sider's an upgrade from whoever the hell you want to say he's replacing on that defense. If Bernier's even anywhere near as good as he was last year, he'll steal a couple games. And, if Zadina doesn't get hurt and Fabry's going to be around for a full season, that second line will probably score a bunch of goals. I mean, combined, they'll probably be a minus 120. Mm-hmm. But they'll score a lot. So that'll be fun because you could probably expect 15 to 20 goals out of Fabry, 20 to 25 out of Zadina, and Filippo will probably accidentally pass 5 or 6 into the net. So it's not bad.
if Mantha doesn't fight anyone, that'll be another 20 goals right there.
Yeah. The one thing where I am optimistic, again, health dependent, is if they bring back Gagne, if Rasmussen is up, their power plays could actually be effective this year. Because if you put Mr. Net Front Specialist Michael Rasmussen, and for as down as we are on him for a 9th overall pick, he's still really damn good at what he's good at, which is net front specialist on the power play. With him sitting in front of Anthony Mantha shots all season, Larkin on that power play unit, you can put Hronek on the point on the first unit because you could have Cholowski on the second unit feeding Zadina with Bertuzzi in front on that unit. That gives you legitimately 2 units that can score. It won't be
a lot of units.
Yeah.
Brad and his units, huh?
Hashtag hockey porn. But because it was a running joke by the end of last season just how completely and laughably inept the second power play unit was for the Red Wings. Like, who did we had Filppula and Nielsen on that unit at one point. Like,
you gotta stop saying unit, man. You've said unit 100 times.
Yeah, but they're called power play units.
Oh man. Okay, I'm very.
It's better than calling it the PP crew.
Oh, is it though?
I mean, depends on your comedic timing, but
I'm gonna flip us over to our NHL draft profile before overtime here, just for the sake of time. On this, so as we figure out more about the year, again, the draft is going to inform us a lot about what next year's lineup is going to look like. We'll do another one of these, of course, but this is just a very quick preview.
Yeah, next one will probably be August, September-ish.
Yeah. So the NHL 2020 draft profile we have for today is for none other than Seth Jarvis from the Portland Winterhawks. So, Brad, do you want to take this one away?
Yeah, sure. A guy that almost certainly won't be drafted by the Red Wings. He said, knocking on wood, knowing that, hey, we might take him 4th overall. Or maybe the NHL screws with the draft lottery and we're picking 6th again. Which is actually possible, which is horrifying. Because if the season's canceled, who knows? Anyways, Seth Jarvis is a small skilled forward in the WHL who put up just, I think when I was writing my write-ups today for my article, I used the term cartoonish numbers in the WHL, something like 90, I want to say 98 points in 50-ish games as an undersized winger in the WHL, which is just incredible. Skating, fantastic. Really good on his edges. Decent top end speed. Really good hands. Really good passer, and can actually score. I don't love his shot, but it's good enough for the way he plays. He plays with a ton of pace, which I'm a huge fan of. That's one of my biggest things when examining small, especially small skilled forwards in junior. Can they play fast? Because they lose time and space when you move up in the ranks, and he does. He plays really, really fast and has the skill and the vision to accompany it. This is one of those guys, if he was 6'1" with his toolkit's a surefire top 10 pick. I project him somewhere towards the middle of the first round. Because again, you can't ignore the fact that I think he's 5'10" or 5'11" or something like that. And not a poor skater, but definitely not a burner. So, a really, really intriguing prospect. A dark horse for me to slip into the top 10, possibly. It wouldn't shock me if someone like Jarvis better than a Lundell or a Perfetti. Obviously, our patrons have seen my rankings. I don't like him better than those two, but it's not crazy to think a team might.
Yeah, we've labeled, or we've talked about guys where nothing really screams at you in terms of their skills or individual skills. Like nothing is elite or stands out too much, but they just kind of like quote unquote get it done. And Seth Jarvis is a guy who gets it done. And that's not to understate what Brad said. He's quick. He's very creative. He's really offensively talented. He plays with speed. He can think the game quickly. He can set up plays in basic ways or show his like pretty good playmaking skills and be pretty creative with it. But nothing really stands out as, this guy's the best passer, this guy's the best shooter, this guy's the best skater. But he still has put up the numbers in the dub. So that's been really good to see from Seth Jarvis. And it's inspired a lot of people to have him pretty high on their rankings. I've seen him, I think, as high as like a top 10 before, like just cracking the top 10. And I've seen him low 20s, even in the second round. So, likely this won't be someone that Detroit will have the opportunity to look at. But if you want to label guys where it's like, this would be a monumental steal if he falls to 32, this would be it. He'd very easily qualify in there. I would not call that likely. I also wouldn't have called it likely that Joe Veleno fell to Detroit, though.
I was just thinking that, like, my 10th ranked prospect we picked at 31 years, so you never know, which is why we're covering everybody. I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but I kind of randomed an order of how we'd cover prospects to get it. And based on assuming we're not doing the draft until September, we might almost be able to cover 2.5 rounds worth of prospects by the time it's all said and done. So you will see us really, really soon start diving into like mid to late second round rated prospects. Well, we already did Jean-Luc Foudy, so we've kind of hit that range, but we're covering everybody. So we're hoping that
we'll get it right.
We're not missing anybody, but we're hoping if a guy like Seth Jarvis does fall, or if he falls into the mid 20s, he probably would be a good trade up target for Detroit, honestly.
Yeah.
So if something weird does happen and they land him, you guys are fully aware of him. And because we're probably going to be able to go so deep on our rankings when the Red Wings are making 3 second-round picks, hopefully they're all guys we've covered so that everybody listening kind of, that guy. Yeah, no, I really like that guy. Great. I'm happy.
Yeah.
The key word that comes to mind when I think of Seth Jarvis is his versatility. He plays center, he plays wing, he plays power play, he plays penalty kill, and he's good at all of them. That is a type of player that a team 20 to 30 won't hesitate to draft because they can put him anywhere in their roster and probably get point production. So if the Red Wings really want him in the draft and he's hanging around at 20, they're going to have to trade up because I don't see him making it out of the first round or anywhere. I don't even see him outside the top 25.
Not that they're the same player, but speaking of versatile player, power play, PK, 5-on-5 offense.
Luke Glendening.
Joe Veleno comes to mind again. So anything's possible.
So that's he's one where you could comfortably slot him into. Yeah, if Detroit doesn't draft him first to fourth overall, which I certainly hope not, you can really, really hope for him with 32nd or maybe even a trade up, and that would be a good get. Especially if he does play center in the NHL and like his skill set translates into it being an NHL center, that's a really good NHL center. So again, there's a lot of ifs, and the probability of that is naturally low. It would be for anyone, but not a skill set to scoff at.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet on him being a center in the NHL, though. It's nice to have in the tool belt, but not where I would project him based on his current skill set. And he's not even playing center in Portland right now, so...
All right, we are going to head over to Overtime, where we're going to start off with Patreon. These supporters are who allow us to do this show, especially through this quarantine. So thank you all. And as our way of saying thank you, we're going to be reading out your comments first and foremost. Mike Lennox says, with Yzerman having a full season under his belt and a scouting committee he's comfortable with, do you think we see a stylistic change to the way we draft, specifically the types of players we take beyond the first round?
I hope so, because I still haven't gotten over the scars of 2017, where that size themed draft that turns out it is shaping up to be an absolute disaster for how many picks the Red Wings had that year. I don't know. There's rumors going around that Yzerman has told his scouting team he does not and will not draft players who aren't, air quotations, competitors, guys who have big, high compete, high motor, high energy, which does seem to hold up with last year's draft when you look at the likes of Seider, Tuomisto, Master Simone, all known for their motors, their engine, their desire to win. It does concern me, though, because if they held that philosophy back in 2013, we wouldn't have Anthony Mantha. And I don't think there's anybody drafted after Mantha who would be better than Mantha at the moment. So I hate when people put restrictions on drafting like that, but it's only a rumor. We don't know if it's true. And if a guy like Gunler hypothetically falls to pick 32, you'd be insane not to draft him, but he has all those compete questions. But yeah, stylistically, I don't think so. I think Yzerman's just strikes me as the best player available. So if it's a small, shifty forward, or if it's a big power forward, or I don't think it's going to matter to him. I think he's just going to try and max out value on every pick in his mind to what the best value is.
Kyle Sanders says, howdy boys, it's your friendly neighborhood Kyle, here to ask the hard-hitting questions. What color is best for perfect pancake, lighter or darker?
Lighter.
Yeah, lighter, but like medium lighter.
Like that nice golden color is your sweet spot. But if you have to go a little over or under that, I'd prefer a little under.
Don't you dare burn my pancakes.
Favorite season, and someone owes me a Patreon refund if Evan says the words summer and golf in the same sentence.
My favorite season is summer, but it has nothing to do with golf. I hate the cold. I know I'm a hockey, eat, sleep, and breathe hockey, but we've perfected hockey indoors. I have no more use for the cold. So I love summer. I love barbecuing. I love being outside. Just give me summer all the time.
I'll take winter for snowboarding.
He got around you. Favorite podcast to listen to? 31 Thoughts. I'm a big fan of 99% Invisible, and I honestly don't have time for much more outside of that.
Yeah, it honestly depends on the week. For the big name podcasts, like the ones that everybody probably already listens to, I like 31 Thoughts, Ray and Dregs. The Too Many Men podcast that's relatively new with Allison, Sarah, and Shayna is really good. For non-hockey podcast, I always keep my eye on Stuff You Should Know because they have some really interesting topics come through every once in a while. So, but yeah, in a normal week, I'm lucky if I can get through 4 or 5.
The rest of this comment is for some reason not showing up. So we're going to go to Greg P. He says, hey boys, how's it going? Oh yeah, we forgot to talk about this. We were on the Wings for Breakfast with Max and Prashanth on their latest episode, I think their latest episode, to do a mock draft, and that was part 1 of 2 of a little crossover series we're doing. So go check that out to see how that mock draft went. Spoiler, Brad drafted a billion times.
Yeah, I had the Red Wings in Ottawa, so I had all the picks.
Yeah, that was a fun episode to do. So it was cool to go in there with them. And as we have in the past, we'll have them back and do something similar down the road. But this time with Evan being the resident trash talker. So I'm sure that'll be a little bit more brutal. He goes on to say, I assume Evan couldn't be bothered to record even more. Probably too much driveway golf taking place. So naturally, I'm sure that episode won't gain traction because what's a feature without the main voice of the show?
Agreed.
On a real note, always appreciate the content, especially in these trying times. My one question as a newer listener, I'm curious who voiced your intro and outro. The mysterious fourth voice that's never credited. Can't wait for the next episode. It's a artist that we worked with who does voiceovers and stuff, and I'm terrible because I forget her name, but I'll look it up and I'll put it out there and credit her because I think she did a fantastic job. She actually made our whole intro and outro, which was really cool of her. The septic tank of that bitch Carol Baskins says, will somebody tell the bitch Carol Baskins to quit feeding me human remains? Also, Terry gave me indigestion. Thank you, septic tank. Connor Jager says, hey boys, long time no comment. With all the prospect and draft talk, it got me thinking, if you can guarantee the Wings get the first overall pick in one of the next 3 drafts, which would you choose and why?
2022, 100. No, 2022. Give me Shane Wright. 100 out of 100 times. He's 2 years from now, right? So 2020 is Lafreniere. Next year will probably be Atu Ratti, and then Shane Wright the year after that. Yeah.
Do you not?
Shane Wright just beat Connor McDavid's 15-year-old scoring stats in the OHL.
Yeah, but
I'm not saying he's going to be better than Connor McDavid, but Shane Wright is probably got a strong chance to be the second best player in the NHL behind Connor McDavid for a good long time.
that's a lot to say about a guy who's not going to be drafted for 2 more years.
I know it's insane, but I mean, literally, he's one of only a handful of players to get exceptional status for the OHL, and then he walked into the OHL and put up more points in his 15-year-old season than Connor McDavid did. He are real good.
Joseph Delia says, hey guys, I constantly think of questions to ask you throughout the week and then forget when it's time to ask. So you guys come here often? Okay, bye. Joe Deppy says, I've been watching a bunch of classic games and I decided I like hockey more with the 2-line pass rule. There aren't many Hail Mary passes that result in icing all the time, which allows the game to flow better. Please tell me why I'm wrong. Also, can we all agree that the trapezoid is dumb and needs to be removed? Thanks for keeping the content going, guys. It's made quarantining a bit more bearable.
The trapezoid rule is stupid because it was put in place because of one goaltender. You want more offense? Let the goalies handle the puck more. They're more likely to cough it up than a defenseman is. And when they cough it up, it's at the cost of an empty net. So, yeah, I hate the trapezoid rule. The 2-line pass, we as Red Wings fans will hate the current system because our team uses it horribly. We just do the full-length dump and chase. Good teams use that for extended passes to spring odd man rushes, to come through the neutral zone with a ton of speed, and it keeps the neutral zone from being clogged. So if you take our Red Wings colored glasses out of it, it's better this way. But it has to be properly utilized, and the Wings don't do that.
Josh Terrell says, Dub, I was wondering your guys' thought on Antonio Strange's local kid who looks to be in the 2nd round range currently. Thanks. Stranges is the right way to say it, right?
Stranges.
Yeah.
It's not like strangers. It's more like a soft A.
Yeah. Thoughts on him?
He's fine. I think I've got a 3rd round ranking on him. He's got talent. Doesn't seem to ever fully put it together. And given the team he plays on, I don't know why, because he's had every opportunity. Anytime I see a guy with that many tools but just never seems to string it together, it leaves me with question marks. Again, 3rd round grade for me, still a good player, a guy who has a shot to turn into an NHL player, but I don't know if I'd hold my breath at this point. Something needs to change for him for that to happen.
Yeah, he's the guy when they drafted him 2 years ago that I thought would be a 1st rounder, no doubt, and it just hasn't really been a thing for him. When I saw him skating when he was 16, I thought he was 19 years old. That's how good he was. So I guess if a team falls in love with him, take him in one of the later rounds. But yeah, it's kind of disappointing he hasn't become more and kind of what he should be.
Garrett TV says Hockey Amigos finally caught up on the latest all Q&A Patreon exclusive. Really enjoyed it. Good option for a recurring format every couple of months. It was especially fun listening to all of you drop casual frick bombs the whole time after we lost to Tampa Bay in the playoffs shortly after this podcast started. Emphasis on the air quotes. Question, Brad, what the heck is that deke/practice device you mentioned buying from Mika on a recent episode? I think you sell it at your store. Also, I found toilet paper, so got that going for me. Cover your mouths. Let's go Red Wings.
It's called a Super Deker. Stupid fun, stupidly addictive, way too expensive, but still probably worth it, honestly.
Stay Fresh Onion Bags of Fournier Company. Oh, that's a list. Says, my friends Carol Baskin did not kill her husband. He was obviously smuggling drugs to and from Costa Rica, and rival drug smugglers captured and disposed of him. If she tells the truth, then she would legally lose any money she inherited from his death. She admitted that if her properties were to be more thoroughly searched, then she'd be screwed. What is she hiding that she can't get rid of? More cartel money, which she continues to launder. Surprise, she paid to have him killed and has taken over laundering drug money for Central and South American drug cartels. Oh man, that took a twist. Also, you got an answer wrong last week. The Office is obviously superior to Parks and Rec, but we'll let that slide.
Incorrect.
Favorite Doctor from Doctor Who? I've never been a Doctor Who person.
Who?
Never seen an episode.
Favorite book? Cheap answer, Harry Potter series?
You guys read?
I'll go with Steve Dangle's book because it's the only one I've read in the last 2 years.
Cicerelli, Holmstrom, or Tyler Bertuzzi?
Sorry, what? Sorelli?
Cicerelli.
Cicerelli, Holmstrom, or Bertuzzi?
Yeah.
In their prime or with the Red Wings?
He just asked which one of the three.
I mean, Cicerelli's a Hall of Famer, but if we're talking about what they did with Detroit, Holmstrom.
Homer, just because he was part of that core. Favorite Nirvana song? I don't know if this is a cheap answer, but it Smells Like Teen Spirit.
That's the correct answer.
I can't even name another one.
Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or Tidal?
Spotify, I guess.
I have Apple Music, but I admit Spotify is objectively better.
I have Apple Music, and I don't overthink it. It's fine.
Favorite Smash Bros. Character? Samus?
I like Link. Link is fun.
Like, how far back are we going? Can I, pick Star Fox?
Yeah, hell yeah, you can. A prospect who doesn't skate well or a prospect who doesn't shoot well?
Prospect who doesn't shoot well.
Yes.
Box mac and cheese sauce or making your own from scratch?
Making your own from scratch.
Yeah, you always want to make your own.
Each one has a time and its place.
The real answer, box, because I don't have time to make macaroni from scratch.
Best dish you make from scratch in your own kitchen? Ooh.
Oh man, I don't do anything complicated. I just my specialty is I just do a real good steak.
Pizzas, like homemade pizzas on a pizza stone.
You have a pizza stone?
Hell yeah, I do. It's good.
I haven't made anything super good lately, so I'm drawing a blank.
Ridiculously simple, but I do a pretty good chicken stir fry too.
Yeah, I'm just gonna rapid fire these. Favorite classic automobile? Old Ferraris. I don't know.
1963 Stingray Corvette convertible.
Oh, there it is.
I'm gonna go with the old 69 GTO.
Nice.
Founders or Bells?
I mean, we've done stuff with Founders, so I have to pick them by default.
I only have half of the experience with half of those.
Labatt or Molson? Labatt. They sponsor us.
Yes, 100%.
They sponsored us.
Yeah, it's seasonal.
It's time for Molson to come in.
Meanest team in the NHL.
Meanest?
Yeah.
The Red Wings for what they do to their fans.
Favorite episode of Family Guy?
Oh, God. The first one. I don't remember much.
I don't know. I don't watch Family Guy.
I haven't watched Family Guy in at least 10 years. I can't remember much at all.
After re-signing Burt and Mantha, re-signing all of the rest of the RFAs or letting all of the rest of them walk? Just re-sign them all. And
yeah, because I'm not letting Fabry walk. Are you kidding me?
No. Rank by order in which they're inducted into the Hall of Fame. Jeez. Joseph. Osgood, Vernon, Cujo, Andy Moog, Luongo, Barrasso, Hextall.
Okay, hold on. Let go through them one at a time. I'm going to filter the ones I wouldn't even put in the Hall of Fame first.
Osgood.
No.
Vernon.
No.
Cujo.
Yes.
Andy Moog.
No.
Luongo.
Yes.
Tom Barrasso.
No.
Ron Hextall.
Damn, that one's tough.
I fear for my life, so I'll say yes.
Pizza toppings.
Oh, fuck.
Do we even want to do
Onions, chicken.
Onions and onions and
Those are
chicken.
the only two toppings you're allowed on pizzas. You get
The only
both
two
or
we're
none.
allowed to talk about.
Best Rowan troll job, very obviously when he tricked me into thinking it was Terry.
Yeah, that was the one.
That's the one I was
for
thinking.
sure.
Dancing Coffin guys, yes. Says hello and happy first Yzerversary to you all. Yes, even Brad. Anyways, it was a hell of a few days for the Tampa Bay McNuggets last year when they were swept LOL out loud by the Cannon team, and then Yzerman came home to Detroit. So that's why y'all are hearing that music now, and we're here. That's right, it's dancing coffin time for the Tampa Bay no Yzermans. Feel free to dance on their graves as well. So did you tune into the Detroit Red Wings award on Twitter machine hosted by the inimitable @Helmoroids? I would have thought since you were the name sponsor of one award, you would have been more active, but I can only assume Brad was delirious that his favorite valuable player, Christopher N, won an award. Was actually following along as best I could, but I was indisposed at the time. He says,
Hold on. I got to defend myself here. I know it's a weird time, but for the last few months, I've been making an active attempt to not tweet just for the sake of tweeting. If I send something out, it's because I actually want people to read it, think about it, or laugh at something stupid I said. Not just, oh, cool. Oh, great. Oh, look at this. I'm trying to not be that guy on Twitter because I hate those people on Twitter.
Too bad his other adopted son, Madison Bowie, couldn't win. So in light of that, here are 9 end goals, and Brad has to keep 3. Jokes, he hasn't scored 9 goals, or has he? I don't know. I didn't look it up. Jersey time. Remember the green Canada World Junior jerseys from like 2010 and the gold Team Canada Winnipeg Falcons jerseys?
Yep.
So with that in mind, what teams could go use a new color scheme but retain most of their jerseys' design and integrity? Anaheim and LA are off the table because obviously they need to go back to jade and eggplant and yellow and purple.
I mean, like, can we pick whatever color they want to go to?
Yeah.
Because I still think more teams need to incorporate some kind of purple because, like, those old, as he mentioned, LA yellow and purples were fire. I don't know why when I think of a team that could go for a color change and incorporate some purple, Florida comes to mind.
Yeah, that one is weird. Carolina can work in the Hartford Whaler colors. And get away with it.
More purple teams, more green teams, and I really don't care what teams go for it. Just do it. Just make it happen.
Nashville should have more blue like they used to.
Toronto should just permanently be the St. Pat's.
Oh, hot take.
I remember the Patreon jersey episode. I'm not a fan of their jerseys. Make them all green. Get that nice center white bar with the St. Pat's logo. Love it. Be a top 5 jersey in the league if they did it.
Washington or Buffalo could very easily revert to their black, white, red. Washington, their old copper blue.
Yes.
Those would be good.
100%.
Remember to stay inside, wash your hands, and be respectful of others when you do have to pop out to the shops, or you'll be hearing our infamous tune and seeing us. # Save Fresh Cheese Bags. Thank you, Dancing Coffin guys. Shay says, boys, help me settle a debate. If a team scores twice on a 5-minute power play, are they considered to be 2 for 2 on the power play and clicking at 100%, or would it be 2 for 1 and 200%? Well wishes and thank you for keeping us going through this crazy time.
I think it's considered I think they just stay at 100%. So if you score 1, it's 100. If you score 5, it's 100%. I don't think they swing it either way because, I mean, you can't have 500% on one power play, right? So I think that's just the way it works. If you score, it's 100%. If you don't, it's 0%. I think they just keep it simple.
We have time for a couple of Reddit questions. Evan, what do you normally shoot, and what's your favorite club in your bag? And also, what's the best shot you've hit so far?
I already replied to that on Reddit, but it all depends on the course and if I've played it before. Obviously, if you have a home course, it's easier to shoot better or track your scores. It's very hard to just walk up to a new course and try and shoot what you normally shoot unless it's really easy.
DHO41 says, hey guys, listen to your 2-round mock and I have some questions. First, Shakir Mukhamadullin. There seems to be some less than positive opinions of him in the comments on Twitter, and I was curious to know what he brings to the table as a late second-round pick and why people aren't the biggest fans of him. Also, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I know that his offensive upside seemed to diminish this season from where it was projected to be. He's still a good defensive defenseman, so it's kind of the anti-pick I normally make. Honestly, my Mukhamadullin pick when I made it was more because I didn't love who was still available. So I just grabbed the best defenseman I still had on my board. And there wasn't a lot of other great defensemen still available at that point. So he's a project guy that, can defend. And my reasoning there was it was the third second round pick. I hadn't picked a defenseman yet, and hopefully his offensive upside comes back.
Number 2, every draft players get overlooked and elite players are found after first and second round. Are there any names like that aren't consensus top 50 or top 60 prospects that you guys feel could be elite talents? Guys like Braden Point or Johnny Gaudreau.
I think I actually did pick him for one of my teams in that mock draft. I see Zayd Wisdom, late third, fourth round in most mocks. His trajectory, I really like him. Again, anybody you have rated outside of the second round is a hope and a prayer, and you're saying it with the asterisks. This X, Y, and Z has to go right for this player for it to happen, but in this draft, that's the guy for me. I'm sure there's a few guys in Europe who I haven't seen that are better candidates for this, but given that I watch a lot of the OHL, that's the guy. Those are the guys I tend to gravitate to for the late round gems, so I'll say Zayd Wisdom.
Arrow Boy Tim says, "Hey guys, I just started listening last year and I love the pod. Thanks to Awood40 on YouTube, I've been getting my Red Wings hockey fix mostly through hours of Datsuk highlights. Some of those moves still make me make my jaw drop. Can you all name some of your favorite Datsuk moments?" Oh, the first time we saw the classic Pavel Datsuk pull the string on the puck against Marty Turco in Dallas on that breakaway.
The birth of the backhand toe drag. Love it.
Ooh, love that move.
To try to pick, because everybody knows the obvious ones. When he broke Couture's ankles, his backhand toe drags, his flip on Niemi. Given how ridiculous a pass it was and the circumstances when it happened, I'll go with his ridiculous through traffic backhand saucer pass that he put right on the tape. Game 6, I want to say 2011 against San Jose, when Detroit was down 3-0, tied late in the third, and that was the winning goal to send it to a Game 7 after being down 0-3. I mean, that's just quintessential Datsuk. Big play, high skill, perfect moment.
For me, it's the playoff series against Arizona. Any game in that series, that's just quintessential Datsuk for me.
And time for one more. Does Rasmussen get the number 3 center job this coming year, or do we continue to play washed-up veterans like Filip and Nielsen in that role?
I hope he gets to look at it. I probably wouldn't bet on it, but I'm hoping, and I think there's at least a reasonable chance it could happen.
Let's see who the coach is.
Now, I know the Red Wings are trying really, really hard to make Rasmussen a center. I still hold my opinion. I think he's better on the wing. I would keep him on the wing. Whatever. If they want him to be a center, he can be a center. He's still a better option than anybody else we could throw in that third-line center role right now. So, sure, I would, but I wouldn't think Blashill would, and I don't know what a new coach would do.
All right, with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast. We'd like to thank all of our listeners. Thank you for supporting us, and we're glad we can keep this going, especially through a time when we have no sports. So thank you to our name level sponsors, the Septic Tank of That Bitch, Carol Baskins, Dead Panda Society, Brad Smith, Andrew Bohan, Scott Martin, Kayla Thompson, Jacob Turner, Matt McKay, Brandon M., Matthew M. Rice, Luke Johnson, Ryan Lewis, Langa Beer, Clayton Van Dyken, Kaylin Wood, Hassam Al-Qassam, Arjun Shankar, Charlie Elkins, Hannah Lee, Sean Levine, Alex Ott, Ashley Van Conant, Chris Frank, Connor Layton and Danny Jr., Matthew Keeler, Craig Kibble, Simon Anderson, Antonio Gracias, John Evans, Kay Waz, and Stan Olsen. Thank you all so much. We are going to wrap it up for the night, and we will see you midweek.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockey Town Evan.